Sage CRM offers ISVs, independent software vendors and developers, a first-class experience. We've got APIs that are open, they're standards-based, and they're free for everyone to be able to use, whether that's customers, partners, developers, ISVs. We want our APIs to be used to integrate Sage CRM beyond the Sage family of products, beyond the Sage Business Cloud, and become part of an ever-expanding ecosystem. Now, for most customers and partners, the need for development is pretty small scale. I know we have got fantastic vertical solutions that have been developed on Sage CRM, but for the purposes of my thinking for this session is that I'm thinking really how customers and partners are typically focused on an integration with, say, an individual business system or adding a new entity within the system, and generally these are relatively small projects within tight timeframes. Now, elsewhere, I've discussed the design of Sage CRM and how it emphasizes codeless customization. Hopefully you've seen that it's a very easy tool to install, it's very easy to adapt, and very easy to configure around a customer's requirements. Now, the consequence of this is that many partners who do Sage CRM implementation aren't coders by background. There's an awful lot of our partner base who have a background in accountancy and a background in general business skills, but not coding. And some of our partners, of course, have been through IT courses at university and college and are very much skilled in coding. But most business partners staff would probably admit that they're not experts in coding, but instead their expertise is in other areas, such as the installation and configuration of the accounting products, whatever those Sage accounting products are, and they have solid skills in analysis and business consultancy that allows them to fully understand customer needs. So the majority of our business partners are also generalists, and they typically have to perform day-to-day roles, and they're very flexible in that. They may be creating a demo one day, installing Sage CRM at a customer site the next, and then logging a support call the day after. Now, whether development takes place in really a project framework that emphasizes traditional waterfall methodologies, or your implementation approach and development approach is through agile development techniques, or even you've used just an informal ad hoc approach, there are a number of very clear elements to a development that go towards determining the quality of the end implementation of Sage CRM. Now, we can go ahead and we can think about the features that we want. We can determine what we want within the end system that is implemented, and we can decide to go for a big bang implementation where all of the features are added at once, and that's like deciding that we're going to implement this across all of the departments within an organization. Or we can go in an incremental way that allows both the business and the partners to understand whether or not the assumptions and decisions that were initially made are correct. Now, the decisions about features that are implemented always impact time and necessary costs, and the reality of budgets will always control the time that can be committed to a project and the eventual scope of the finished implementation. You can see that there's an awful lot of tension within that sort of calculation of trying to balance the idea of how much money you've got available for a project, how much time you've got available for a project, and then just exactly how much stuff you want to cram into that project in order to create a finished product. Now, if the balance is not correct, then it's always going to be the quality of the implementation that suffers. And of course, the aim of an implementation of Sage CRM is to provide an exceptional customer experience. Actually, probably the realistic point of an implementation of Sage CRM is a customer to be able to start getting a return on investment as soon as possible and to be able to get that greatest return based on the availability of the system in order to improve the measures that they're using for their success. Very often, when I used to run training courses in classrooms around the world, I used to regularly ask how many of the participants on my courses were actually certified consultants. And we've got different certification mechanisms around the world, and nearly all of the people that used to come on to my training classes were certified, and all of them had greater or lesser experience in delivering successful implementations of Sage CRM, and they all knew what a problematic project looked like. And those observations that they were able to share are very important, and it allows me to get a sense that all partners have some degree of expertise, which, when allowed to be discussed in an open way, allows participants to learn from one another, just as they would learn from something like this, a formal education chat. Now, what you should be aware of is the amount of resources that are available to help us implement Sage CRM successfully. All the resources that are there available to help with the development. Now, one of the best ways that Sage CRM consultants who are approaching a development project or an implementation project can prepare themselves is to use the resources on Sage City, the Help Center, the Sage CRM Help Center, and the Sage CRM community. These sites have many resources that are easily searchable, and possibly the most accessible way of making sure that all of the skills and knowledge are up to date is to use the Sage CRM playlist on the Sage Support and Training YouTube channel and the Sage CRM e-learning platform. I mentioned this Help Center, and that contains all of the links to the essential PDFs and documents a developer may need, whether these are going to be the system administration guide, the developer reference, or the implementation workbook. And that's actually a very important book to have a look at. Now, there are project pain points, and in my discussions with different partners, different customers as well, I've started to gather a sort of a playbook of different problems that a partner may face when trying to help a customer, especially if that partner, that consultant from the partner company, is a relatively new member of the team and the customer's implementation is new to them. So they have fairly fresh Sage CRM skills and the customer's site is new to them. So the following are my thoughts around the challenges that a consultant may face when familiarizing themselves with a system. The first thing is to say that systems are not static. Sage CRM is a very long tail application. We've got customers who have been using Sage CRM almost for as long as I've been working with Sage. And that's a very, very long time. It was in the I did actually join this millennium, but it is a very long time ago that I started working with Sage CRM and Sage. So systems aren't static. The first thing to point out is they get changed, they get upgraded. So you're never working with a system that is purely a particular version. It has always been upgraded from an existing version. You'll find as well, when you're trying to work out why a page no longer works or doesn't work in the way that you expect it, or you're trying to find a matter in a customization, you will find that your colleagues will not have commented and documented your code. And there won't be any assumptions stated around how users are supposed to use this system. Very often, business cases, the use cases are not documented for a particular feature that is implemented within Sage CRM by a partner. This is because you're in a project, you carry out a set of customizations based on the customer's requirements. Everyone's involved in that. You've got the analyst, you've got the customer, you write your assumptions, and then of course everyone leaves the business and moves on, and no one remembers what the initial assumptions were when you created that particular workflow or when you created that particular new entity. So very often you have to try and tease out the assumptions that were made around the business and the code and the workflow or whatever when you come to recover that and take ownership of it from a maintenance perspective. You'll find that the business purpose of code is very often not explained. So you will find, if you open up either something like a classic ASP page which has been edited where a new custom entity has been added in, or perhaps it is a editing of a set of C# code within the where the .NET DLL has been used, the .NET API has been used. You will find that the business purpose is not explained, and you may have to tease out the business rule that has been implemented there. Code is always going to be a tendency to spaghettification. The idea that, and I don't mean the spaghettification where it's long and stretched out, I mean it's where it is jumbled and complex and disorganized, because people tend to make practical, immediate, rational little edits to code which don't actually ever go through a process of refactoring to simplify. So you find that code that you've inherited is complex and disorganized, and the customization lacks any consistency, or whether that's in the way in which objects are used, objects are named, or even the naming conventions and the patterns of the variables. You'll find that sometimes the customer no longer has access to the source files that were used to create the implementation. That might be the case where one partner has inherited a customization from another partner, and they no longer have access to the source files, the .NET files that we used to create the customization. This is assuming that the customization has been developed using the .NET API. And it is perfectly case. Sometimes the case is that the partner will go in to carry out some maintenance tasks to discover that the system has been changed, but not by the partner, but by the customer themselves. And the person who made the changes is no longer available within the business. And you will also find that business rules can sometimes be broken apart, so they're not defined in a single location. You can find that actually they are straddled across the metadata. Say CRM is a metadata-driven application, and sometimes it's in the script that we've got. So some of the problems creep in because projects just keep running, and a little bit of code is added here, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and before you know it, there's an unmanageable beast that has grown beyond the understanding of the person next required to edit the code. Now, some of the problems are specific in the way in which Sage CRM allows business rules to be developed. Partners may face a challenge trying to track down issues across the database, ASP pages, the .NET DLLs and JavaScript files. And of course, you may then have also third-party components or integrations installed in the system. And so unpicking, editing and fixing all of those can be a pain.